"Daddy, why are you making breakfast?" Rubbing her waterlogged eyes with her glasses, first grader Nancy asked. "Where's Mom?" Trying to control the burning pancakes, Charles looked at his daughter. Small, skinny, and in pajamas, the girl sat on a stool and folded her arms on the customer green dining room table. It was like she was in a class at school. "Why didn't you even braid your pigtails for the night? Look at you. Rags and hairpins tangled in your hair, trying to appear cheerful," asked my father. However, the dark bags under the eyes and pale skin of the face spoke volumes. "Dad, where's Mom?" asked Nancy cautiously, not letting her teeth speak. "Yes, Mom will come, she will, don't worry." And without distracting me from the clay under the city, began to nervous father. "I think we should add more flour," Nancy said. "Yeah, tried that, it doesn't work. Everything gathers in the pan with skates," complained the hapless cook. "Well, then add eggs," recommended the daughter. "They are out," shrugged Charles. Frustratedly waving a wooden spatula, he squeaked onto the plate a chunky pile with two different sides that should have been a pancake. Nancy poked at the pile squeamishly with her fork, hesitant to pick up a piece, and put it on the plate. "Goodness, I tried so hard." The father pleaded, on the steak. In the tines of the fork a piece of suspiciously shaking substance. Nancy gingerly took a bite. "Daddy, didn't you put any sugar in it?" She stiffened. "I really forgot." Charles slapped himself on the forehead. He tasted the pancake too and threw it in the trash. Ew, but he had a lot of baking soda. "So what are we going to do?" "You can't go to school hungry." "Nothing, Daddy. I'll eat a bun and tea and run," said the girl, trying not to upset her worried parent. Charles poured her tea with sugar, put butter on a piece of loaf. The schoolgirl quickly finished her breakfast and ran to get dressed. She pulled on her own tights, buttoned her dress, and packed her backpack. Done, only she couldn't touch it. Grabbing her hairbrush, she ran to her father. "Dad, help me out." However, her father, who had never had to invent a little girl's pigtails, no matter how hard he tried, could do nothing. "Nancy, you and I are late for school. Why don't you go with a ponytail today? And tonight I'm practicing and I'm going to learn to fly. You'll have the prettiest braids." "What do you mean you're practicing tonight? Isn't Mommy going to be home tonight and tomorrow?" Nancy scared. "No, she'll be here for sure," Charles promised. But from his eyes the girl realized he was deceiving her. Ludmilla, Nancy's mother, didn't come either that evening or the next day. Nor did they wait for her a week later and a month later. Molly disappeared into thin air. Charles never filed an APB. Why would he? He knew his wife wasn't missing. She just walked out on him and begged him not to bother her anymore. At first, Nancy looked out the window every day, waiting for her mother. She would cry before she went to bed. She couldn't fall asleep knowing that her mother wasn't there. Charles did everything so that the girl did not feel deprived at work, took leave at his own expense, took his daughter to the park, to a cafe, to the cinema, or just for walks. He read a lot to her. Mostly it was fun works to lift her spirits. Together they would draw something, make something out of paper or plasticine. It can't be said that all this was useless. Such entertainments really helped to distract the girl. But still Charles noticed what a blow the mother's disappearance had dealt the child. Nancy lost weight, turned pale, became nervous, her appetite worsened, absent-mindedness appeared. Often the girl sat cuddled with her favorite toy and looked at one point. The only wish of the little girl was the return of her mother. Charles could not watch his child suffer. He called every relative and acquaintance he could. Finally, he got his wife's number. "Molly, stop fooling around. Nancy's going crazy without you. Come back, we'll live like you say, according to your rules. Just save the baby. You should see her, she's got no face on her," Charles begged. But all he got in response was a cold answer. "Deal with your daughter yourself. Put me in an orphanage, don't look for me again. I have a new life, and you will never be in it again." Charles barely restrained himself from smashing the phone receiver. But how could this be? How could you be so cruel to a small, innocent child? Watching the little girl suffer was a real ordeal. On every holiday, Nancy made only one wish for Mommy to come back. Her eyelashes would fall out, she would pick it up, take it off, put it on her fist, and, after thinking a little, said quietly, so that luck would not scare her away, "I want Mommy to come back soon. Mommy, please come back. I'm begging you so much." But Mommy never came back, and gradually she accepted her lot in life. Charles also got used to living without his wife. He even learned to cook the simplest dishes, didn't he? But that was progress too. And he learned how to braid pigtails. True, he got them shrimpy every once in a while, but other fathers don't know how to do that. And he sometimes dressed on the wall so that even the teacher at school shook her head. For example, sports pants under a festive lace dress, because only it from his closet was clean, and the tights weren't even found at all. And that was on a weekday, and Nancy sat at the lesson dressed up, with crooked pigtails and in sports pants under the lace hem. People, adults, experienced, looked at the girl immediately. The child grows up without a woman's hand. But soon everything changed, and Nancy's dresses all became in pinions and plaited pigtails, beautiful and delicious. Breakfast on the table, and all because Miranda had come into the house. And it wasn't abstract, but a real, live and warm Aunt Miranda. She was a couple years older than Charles. She had never been married before, had no children, and would have liked to have children, but the diagnosis of infertility prevented her from becoming a mother. Miranda was so happy that Charles had taken her as his wife, she was always in a high spirits. And she didn't walk around the apartment, she walked up. And most of all, she was glad for the man next to her to be able to feel like a mother. Although they say that stepmothers treat stepchildren in counting worse than stepfathers, but it was clearly not about Miranda. The woman put her whole soul into someone else's child. She tried so hard to please the girl, to replace her mother, that sometimes even overplayed. "Yes, something from the pantaloons, I apologize," jumps out. She brought up. A mother is ready to give the last thing to an outsider girl. She's never going to care about you anyway. She'll never call you mom. She'll always love only a cuckoo, because a mother, no matter what kind of mother she is a mother. And you're just a stepmother. Get it through your head. But Miranda wasn't listening. She didn't expect any thanks from Nancy. She was just trying to do it out of the goodness of her heart. "Thank you for being Nancy." "You care," Charles told her. "Thank you for letting me." Nancy is such an extraordinary girl, so delicate, so organized, so soulful. Miranda spoke enthusiastically of her little ward, and Nancy appreciated that attitude too. In time, she began to call Miranda Mama, and the woman's heart fluttered with joy every time she heard that magic word. Time passed, and if earlier Nancy often remembered her mother, now the girl almost did not think about her, if suddenly became sad. And then she would go to Miranda to get a hug. Charles and Miranda never married. The man did not think it necessary to register the relationship, and Miranda was too modest to put the question on the table. Miranda's mother was categorically dissatisfied with the current state of affairs, and Charles bore a grudge. Not only imposed his daughter, but also does not want to marry. What's wrong with that? "You're completely blissful. I'll use you as a servant and nanny for free." I was searched and satisfied, happy. Spit in your eyes, it's all God's work. But Miranda preferred not to take it badly. He won't get married. And no need to beg for a stamp in her passport, she won't. The main thing is that nothing prevents her from taking care of the wall. At first, the woman was afraid that the real mother would show up. She would have to leave this family forever. On the one hand, Miranda wished the girl to reunite with her birth mother, but on the other hand, she was terribly afraid of losing the girl to whom she had become attached. And it is not surprising Miranda was close to P. When she won the Olympics in nature, behavior, and when she got a D in English, when she was bought new roller skates, and when she lost her favorite doll. It was Miranda who persuaded Charles to take in a kitten that Nancy had found on the street and tearfully begged her to keep at home. Miranda read books to her, put her to bed, brushed her hair, bathed her, treated her. When the girl was sick, she stood up for her father. If there was any conflict, Miranda noticed that Charles probably wasn't really interested in her as a woman. There were always much more colorful and showy ladies hanging around him. But Miranda swore to herself that she would hold on with her hands and teeth to stay close to the child. Some things the selfless woman even had to turn a blind eye to. For example, the parties of her common-law husband, whom her mother stubbornly called a cohabitant. What the hell is a common-law husband? "There's no such word," her mother began. "It's cohabitant." "That's your Charles. Were you worried as usual?" "Oh, Mom was worried, Miranda. The word roommate is not a good word. It smells like some kind of crime report." On the evening of March 21st, while under the influence of alcohol, the roommate stabbed her 5 times. Played by Miranda. It's a popular crime show. That's funny to you. And if your Demachka was a decent man, would have married long ago, insisted her mother. Miranda didn't argue. In her heart, however, she was offended that Charles did not want to legitimize the relationship with her. Indeed, several times, especially in government offices, she didn't know how to introduce herself. Who is she? Charles is on the wall, outlaw mother, governess, servant. But time grinds any rough edges. Many years have passed, and Miranda has forgotten all about living in Charles's house on a bird's-eye basis. And even Nancy has all but forgotten that Miranda is not her real mother, so has become so attached to her. They lived a measured and friendly life, each doing his or her own thing. Miranda worked in a small firm, dealing with primary documentation. Charles ran his own small business, and Nancy had just started working at a language school. Everything seemed to be the same as everyone else, and life didn't seem to be changing. But one day Nancy had a handsome student, a young man named Mason, who wanted to improve his level. He needed English for work. He instantly took notice of the fragile, pretty teacher. By then, Nancy no longer wore pigtails. She had long brown hair that built across her shoulders, shining in elastic waves, large eyes, chiseled facial features, a thin neck, and sharp shoulders. The girl was graceful, and her white, smooth skin made her look like a porcelain statue. Many students asked Nancy out, but she turned them all down, citing the rules of corporate ethics. But she couldn't resist Mason. Tall, statuesque young man with thick hair and clear eyes, he had a refined sense of humor, was gallant, witty. He grasped the material in class on the fly, which Nancy as a teacher was undoubtedly pleased with. Under the pressure of a persistent suitor, Nancy gave in, and the pair had an unusually pleasant date. The girl interacted with the young man as if she had known him for years. They both aspired to independence, to financial success, but were also focused on family. They both wanted to travel and develop themselves. But Nancy also really wanted children. And Mason said that in 5 years, not earlier, it was the only thing in which their opinions did not coincide. The young couple's romance developed rapidly, and soon Mason proposed to Nancy. The girl cried, partly showing Miranda the elegant wedding ring on her ring finger, looking at the sparkling rings. The woman was both happy for the 5 lizard men, but also worried at the same time. "Nancy, baby, you don't know him at all." "Oh, Mommy, he's my soulmate." "My soul understands me from half a word." Nancy spoke rapturously of the bridegroom. "If you're a grown-up girl, if you want to get married, we won't stop you. You told your father no. That's the first you know." Mommy smiled and pecked Miranda on the cheek. Miranda was taken aback that she would be the first to know of such an important decision. Charles took the news with restraint and said he definitely wanted to meet Mason. At first they wanted to get together in a restaurant or cafe, but then they decided that it would be better to meet in a home environment. First of all, the groom has never been a guest. He has a separate apartment, and the lovers' dates often took place there. Secondly, their romance was so quickly spun that the young man simply did not have time to visit the bride. Miranda, bewildered, said, "A festive dinner, Mom. We have a wedding in a month." "Not now," laughed Nancy. "Nothing, Nancy. The bridegroom needs a good welcome, to show that we've been waiting for him, you know. Men love a good meal, you bet." Mason, however, appreciated the efforts of his future mother-in-law. He went through all her dishes with appetite, and she carefully put some more on his plate. "Miranda, you're not forgetting about me." Charles jokingly reminded himself. "I'd be so jealous." "Oh, darling, I'm sorry." Such a handsome, interesting young man came over, and I listened and looked. "Mason, maybe you don't have a Caesar yet?" "No, Miranda." "Thank you. I'm so fed it's hard to breathe. I'm usually a moderate eater, but you have such a sumptuous table, I can't help myself. It's unbelievable. Did you make all the food yourself?" "They're from a delivery restaurant?" No restaurants. They save money on everything. Sometimes you come to an expensive, respectable restaurant, and you start eating and realize that the veal is second class, and the dish costs so much that I will cook 4 portions for that money, and it will be much better. So Mason from the gangway scaffolds with a wall smiled at the woman and gently covered the palm of her stepdaughter's hand. "Oh, tell me, what did the wife mostly you cooked?" "I only helped a little," embarrassed the girl undeserved praise. "I can't cook like that, so I didn't count on such luxurious feasts at Arena's place in my family life." "And I'll go to my mother-in-law's," said Mason, jokingly winking at Miranda. "No, then I'll be jealous for sure." Charles laughed and poured the rest of the red dish into glasses. The dinner party came to an end, and when the door closed behind Mason, Nancy turned to her stepmother. "Mom, but what do you think of him? He's a fine young man. At least that's the impression he gives." "Well, we'll see about that. My opinion is not interesting to you, daughter," jokingly indignant father. "Of course I'm interested, Daddy. Just first I wanted to know a woman's view." The girl smiled and gently hugged her father. "So tell me, Daddy, how do you like him, a nice young man? I won't say anything else yet. I think that the wedding can wait. But there's no use in forbidding you to get married. Isn't that right? Is that right? Do you understand, Papa? I want to be a lawful wife." Not like Nancy lowered her eyes. Miranda realized it was about her, and she too lowered her eyes. For some reason, when it came to the fact that her relationship with Charles was not legal, she always felt guilty, as if it was her fault that the man didn't marry her. It's like he's chiding her for not valuing herself. Agrees to live on a bird's license. Another woman would have left a long time ago. Or forced a man to marry her, and she tolerates it because apparently she's worthless. In short, Miranda had a whole bunch of complexes about it, but she did not express it aloud. She tolerated everything in silence. Charles made it clear to her that there would be no wedding, not even a simple marriage, because he was too seriously disappointed in his ex-wife, and at the same time in all the women of the world. First you get married, butterflies, flowers, and then life. Mutual hatred, divorce, hemorrhoids, and spoon cup sharing. No, he doesn't need all those problems. Now deceased. That's what Miranda used to say. He just doesn't want to marry you. You're not his woman. Somewhere there's a man who will take you as his wife and carry you in his arms, not use you as a cook. Who would want me barren? Miranda sobs. Yes, you do. There's a lid for every pot. The mother nodded confidently. You can take a child from the orphanage. But Miranda didn't believe her man was anywhere near. All she had to do was wait. She was sure that her man was far away, so far away that she would never meet him. That's why you have to be happy with what you have. Especially when given the opportunity to be a mother. A wonderful girl like Nancy. And the fact that she's never felt love from a man, that's a woman's bullshit. Some people don't need love at all. They live their lives in peace and don't worry their heads about anything stupid. Despite cohabiting with Charles, Miranda felt like a lonely woman, but she didn't complain about her fate. She went about her business. Nancy, of course, did not want to let go of marriage. It was a pity to part with her. On the other hand, if a daughter creates her own family, it means that soon there will be children, and grandchildren are always good. Like a second wind? No, of course Miranda's life is full of good times. And there will be more in the future. And I don't care if there's no love. The wedding was scheduled in a month, and it seemed to be enough time to prepare everything thoroughly. But in fact, it turned out that the allotted month was disastrously short. Nancy was nervous, fussing, choosing a dress, shoes. And Miranda and the groom's mother were dealing with organizational issues, thinking over the menu, the wedding program. It was to be a bright, unforgettable wedding. One day Nancy and her stepmother chose a master who would make the bride wedding makeup, looking for decided in social networks. They looked at photos and reviews, and suddenly Nancy ahed and froze, clasping her hands to her chest. What's Nancy? Miranda was terrified. That's my mom flying over. Miranda's girl had been plowing the case all morning. Glancing at the screen, she saw a beautiful woman with bright makeup and high hair. Bright blonde, very well groomed, though it was obvious that she was not young. Under the photo, the master commented, Molly, the beautiful Molly, was my guest today. We did evening makeup and hairstyle. Molly was satisfied and promised to come again. Miranda bit her lip looking at this gorgeous lady. She had seen pictures of this woman once before when she was looking through the family album. Molly was in the photo with her daughter. The rest of the pictures had been destroyed or hidden by Charles. Yeah, it was her. Same big eyes, sassy, look honed, nose like a doll's. Miranda was vastly inferior in comparison. Nancy sat for shame in front of the screen, then hurriedly saved the photo as if it were about to disappear. Miranda did not comment on her stepdaughter's actions in any way. She simply remained standing nearby, while the girl frantically flipped through the page of photos, trying to find her mother's face among the clients. Maybe she had come to this salon before. Maybe there was a link to her page somewhere, but she couldn't find anything. Charles didn't like to mention Molly. At first, when Nancy was little, he never spoke ill of his mother, but when she grew up, he admitted that he hated Molly for leaving him so treacherously. One day, Nancy asked her daddy, "Daddy, why don't we try to find Mommy? What would be the point? She left you. Remember how you and I survived, how you cried. Your mother Miranda, forget about that one." And Nancy never thought about it again. She'd tried to look for her when she was a teenager, but she'd given up. She realized it would be easier for her mother to find her because they lived in the same place, she went to the same school. If the mother doesn't look for her daughter, she doesn't want to. But now she sees her pictures and she's animate. "Nancy, are you sure it's her?" Miranda asked timidly. "Do you think I don't recognize my mother?" Nancy sighed. The girl spent the whole evening in thought. She opened the pictures now and then, looking at how beautiful Molly was. Apparently Nancy had not fallen into it, for though beautiful too, she was not so bright and not such a queen. The next 2 days for Nancy passed in torment. Miranda could literally feel this heavy energy from her, as if something was gnawing at the girl from the inside. Finally, Nancy couldn't stand it any longer and went to the salon to see the master. "Hello," she said softly and showed the photos. "I'd like to get this woman's phone number. You're crazy." "This data I will not disclose," cut off the master. "Listen, but this is my mother. I really want to see her." The girl begged. "No," I said no. "I don't know who you are that plotted to leave. Let my daughter, my niece, my sister. And you're not getting Molly's number. The thing is, I'm getting married soon. I'd really like my mom to be there." The girl raised her makeup artist's voice. "I'm telling you again, in human terms, I'm not giving you the number. You'd like it if your details were revealed." "All right," Nancy submitted. "Then I'll give you my number and you give it to Molly." "Okay, tell her it's Nancy's number, her daughter, that I'm getting married, and I'd love to see her at my wedding. Look, do you think I have nothing better to do? I have plenty of clients. I don't have to solve your family conflicts, and neither does your mother. If she wanted to, she would have found you. Wouldn't she? If she doesn't want to see you, then you must have hurt her a lot. I mean, we've been talking to Molly a lot. She never told me she had children. She never mentioned a daughter. So you're such a daughter that your own mother doesn't want to see you." When Nancy recalled this dialogue many years later, she wondered how they had arranged the makeup artist's head, the vases standing on the table. But she was young then. What kind of girl that any kind of rudeness, especially undeserved, brought to a stupor? So the girl silently turned and walked away. After standing for about 5 minutes on the porch of the saloon, she came back and slapped a note on the table, saying, "I'm sorry to bother you so much, but still, if you get a chance, give Molly my number," and promptly left the salon. Day 2, day 3 went by. Molly didn't call. Probably the makeup artist never passed the note, the girl thought. But on the 4th day, an unfamiliar number popped up on the screen of her phone. "Hello," Nancy said quietly into the receiver. "Hello." A woman's voice answered. "Nancy, it's me, Mom. Oh my God." "Oh my God. Oh my God." Nancy exclaimed. "Mommy, did you really call? I don't believe it. I'm sorry you had to wait so long for my call." The woman spoke softly. Miranda heard her daughter's conversation from the next room, and her heart sank. The woman she had dreaded for so many years had appeared in her life. Uninvited guests a nightmare, but there was nothing she could do because she realized how important it was for Nancy to see her own mother. Miranda listened to the girl on the phone making arrangements to see her and felt an extraordinary discomfort at her words. "I'm sorry, I heard everything," she admitted quietly as Nancy left the room. And I wasn't going to hide anything or do anything behind your back. The girl shrugged. That's why I didn't apologize. Nancy, I want you to know. I don't mind you meeting your mother. Miranda said. Sorry, Mom, said Nancy. And then she ran out of steam. After all, now that Molly was here, it was strange to call her stepmother Mom. Miranda pretended not to notice the awkward pause, and the girl continued. But you do realize that even if you were 10 times against it, I would still meet with my mom. You just don't have the moral right to forbid me from seeing her. Of course, Nancy, of course. Don't even think I might object, Miranda assured her. Charles, on the other hand, was adamantly opposed to Nancy meeting Molly. What kind of fantasy is that? She showed up 16 years later, the bastard. No, Nancy can only meet me over my dead body. I get it. But she's a big girl. She'll decide for herself if she wants to see her mother or not. Miranda tried to talk some sense into the man. The argument turned into a serious family quarrel, and Nancy declared, I'm not a little girl anymore, and you, Daddy, can't stop me. If I choose to meet my mom, I'm going to meet her, she said firmly. Except it just so happened that Molly lived in a small picturesque village 50 kilometers from the city. It was cheaper and closer to nature, she explained. The woman did not work and lived on her late husband's money. In the city, visited for shopping, to go to a restaurant, to have fun, or to make a haircut. Well, she preferred to live in the middle of nowhere and move at the first call of her daughter. She could not or did not want to. Before the wedding was just days away, and mother and daughter never met. But on the day of the wedding, Molly gifted those gathered with her presence. She appeared at the wedding suddenly dressed up, chic hairstyle and bright makeup. She gave her daughter a picture hug and a kiss. Then kissed the groom and said, take care of her. I'm giving her to you, the most precious one. Miranda almost choked with such insolence and hypocrisy. After so many years, she says she is giving away her most precious thing. Why didn't you raise this jewel? Nancy was confused, not knowing what to say. She was glad to see her mother, but at the same time she had so many questions for her that she didn't know where to begin. Then Molly said, we'll talk to you about everything, honey. We'll discuss everything. But Molly looked askew and with a certain amount of contempt. Miranda felt it. Indeed, next to this firebird she looked modest, and she was getting blurry with age. And Molly clearly did not give herself slack, watching herself diets, gyms. So what Miranda did is her own fault. She's never even had a baby, and she looks like she's got 3 at least. And this one's going to be like a girl. Don't be jealous, Miranda told herself with annoyance. But the witch with green eyes held her tightly in her poisonous embrace, and it was hard not to envy, because all the attention not only of the family, but also of all the guests was fixed on this bright woman. Even Charles, who had never said a good word about Molly before, was constantly looking at her, first furtively, and when he drank, he prayed openly. And Molly herself acted like the queen of the party. She often had a microphone in her hands, and she was always pushing some speech, congratulating the young people or making toasts. When the music started playing and everyone started dancing, Molly was the star here and danced as if no one could see her. But admittedly, she did it well. True, it would have been possible to limit herself to less seductive movements, to be more modest at her daughter's wedding. But the guests decided not to hold back and had a lot of fun. She attracted attention, and no longer the bride was the protagonist. She, from the daughter of the groom's mom, did not distract the groom's daughter, savored on the cheek of one or the other, that something whispered in their ears, led by the hand to chat, then one, then the other. Miranda had no opportunity to approach Nancy. She didn't want to get any closer. And Nancy herself seemed to have forgotten about her stepmother, whether she was confused, whether she didn't want any conflicts, or whether she just didn't know how to behave. It was a joke to have a wedding on the same day, and the pale mother showed up. Miranda couldn't imagine feeling alone at the wedding she was so anxiously awaiting. Of course, Miranda realized it wasn't her party, but she wanted so badly to share the joy with the girl she'd spent years caring for. But here comes Molly and steals the party. How awful is this? Miranda tried her best to keep a straight face so that Nancy would in no way notice her stepmother's lack of attention. Let the girl have fun, and this day would be a bright memory for her, not marred by someone else's empty resentments. Although Miranda was still unfortunate to see how Molly, who did not invest a penny in the wedding, and as a gift brought a cheap tea set for 6 people, became the main character of the evening. By the end of the wedding, Molly was already friends with all the guests and talked to them as if they had known each other for 100 years. Hint, she was also Canadian, but the conversation didn't work out. "You're the woman who told me about Nancy," I asked her in a single voice. "I don't know who exactly my daughter told you about." Miranda replied coldly, No, you misunderstand me. I wasn't talking to your daughter, I was talking to my daughter, Nancy." "And your daughter?" "I don't know. Is she here?" Molly asked with an innocent smile. Miranda said nothing, silently taking a sip from her glass. "Well, Miranda, I am very grateful to you for taking care of us all these years. Walls and my husband," sweetly sang Molly. "What do you mean, your husband?" Miranda didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "I left my family for a while, but now I'm back and you can have no more births, rest. I can imagine how hard it was all those years doing laundry, cleaning, caring, nursing. Now, you don't have to do those chores. It's nice, isn't it?" "No, it's not great." "You're confused, Molly. I'm not a servant. I'm a wife." "Charles didn't tell me he got married." Shrug. "A guest." Miranda had nothing to object. The roommate was worried. She remembered the diagnosis her late mother had given her. Standing up abruptly from the table, Miranda went to the restroom. How unpleasant to hear all this. And no one to stand up for her. It felt like the people closest to her were really using her. When they don't have to, they don't want to apologize. Don't get worked up, don't get worked up. Miranda urged herself. But convincing herself to calm down was an impossible task. Finally, the wedding was over. The newlyweds went to the hotel, where a suite was reserved for them. Of course, it was possible to go straight to Mason's house, where the wall stuff had already been moved. But one wanted to prolong the romance and celebration. The newlyweds refused to fly to where they both wanted to go on their wedding trip. Now, it was not at all touristy weather, and they did not want to go to another place. It was decided to wait a little longer and enjoy the trip to the fullest. Nancy had no idea that she would have more colorful adventures at home than on the trip. After the event, Miranda waited for her husband, Charles, who promised to bring a cab. But when the car pulled up to the building, Miranda's jaw dropped. Sitting nonchalantly in the cabin was Molly. Charles, who had settled into the front seat, tapped the window, attracting the attention of his common-law wife, and waved. The woman gingerly opened the car door and timidly took a seat next to the beautiful Molly. She looked at Nancy's birth mother obliquely, as if the woman was the mistress of everything Miranda had now, and now she had come to claim hers. "I'm not disenfranchised. I've done a lot for this family. I haven't stolen anything from anyone. Nancy loves me. He loves me." It was like a mantra the Miranda woman was saying to herself. "Molly's having a nice sleepover tonight. She was in such a hurry to get to the wedding that she didn't have time to book a hotel, and she can't find anything. It's all booked up. But I guess there are hostels." Miranda spoke calmly. "Hostels? Have you seen the crowd there, Miranda?" "Oh no. Charles would not allow his wife to be endangered by sleeping with anyone suspicious." Of course, Charles confirmed, and Miranda was struck by his instant change of heart. Not so long ago, he'd been extremely nasty to Molly, and now he was worried that she wouldn't have to spend the night in a hostel. Pressing her lips together, Miranda tolerated her husband's behavior. She drove the whole way in silence, trying to ignore Molly's comments. "Oh, it's been a long time since I've been down this street. When was this building built? Wow." Molly really felt like she was coming home. And the closer they got to the house she had lived in for many years, the more excited she became. So worriedly she spoke. "It's been a long time since I've been here, very nervous. Am I really going to walk into my apartment now?" "Well, Molly, some things have changed. We've been wallpapering, for example. We had the bathroom remodeled. But we kept the furniture. Remember how much you hated that bulky furniture we got from Grandma? And now it's considered Stalinist Empire or Triumph style. You know, the Americans came to visit my wall. They admired the furniture, and the crystal was a delight. And you hated those cabinets, remember?" "Oh my God, Charles, yeah, I was a girl. What did I waste in those closets of yours?" "Yeah, and the trend is to renovate. And I wanted glossy kitchens too. I know you've got a cartload of stuff on me. but it's all in the past now. I'm completely different now. Miranda, as if listening to the conversation of old friends and could not believe her ears. What on earth is this? Did they forget she was here? How should she react to this? Make a sarcastic scandal? It was a shame she couldn't be sarcastic. Miranda was generally a kind, non-confrontational person. She never got into trouble and tried to get out of unpleasant situations as quickly as possible. So now she was confused and didn't know how to proceed. Charles put his arm out so that his ex-wife could take him under her elbow. The dressed woman, smiling broadly and swaying slightly from the drink, walked forward, looking at the familiar entryway. They've renovated it. They've put up new mailboxes, she said. We have a new elevator too, the man boasted, as if it was his own merit. How nice. Do you remember what the elevator was like? How you used to shake in it? Do you remember how we got stuck in the elevator once? Molly asked playfully. What are you? Charles is embarrassed. I see, remember. Dishonest, she laughed, gritting her teeth. Miranda had no patience for nudity. She knew she'd never do that. And this one had the nerve to act like that. But nothing. Tomorrow Charles would be sobered up and he would kick Molly out. When Molly entered the apartment, she made herself at home. She dismounted and went into the room. Well, I see. I see the wallpaper's different. I've added a few things. Well, the chandelier's the same. Wow, it's the same as it was 16 years ago. And this closet, and this bulky sergeant, which I hated, and this sofa, which I didn't have, but it's old-fashioned too. We didn't want it to be out of style. Oh, right. No, I love it. It's beautiful. Well done, Charles. Molly went into the kitchen. Oh, is that our old set? She laughed, opening and closing cabinet doors. Did you paint it? I painted it, Miranda confessed quietly. Charles wanted to buy new furniture, but I felt sorry for him. It's a nice piece of furniture, so I refinished it. It's beautiful. Well, I can see that you've tried, she praised the guest condescendingly. Only Miranda thought she was the guest in this house. And now the hostess had come to ask her for the painted furniture and the wallpaper. It felt as if Charles was also making excuses to Molly for something, saying, Sorry, I didn't wait for you. I brought someone else. Molly unceremoniously walked around her ex-husband's apartment. Without asking, opened all the closets, looked at things, sniffed perfume, and then suddenly said, Okay, I'm in the shower to sleep, Miranda, and give me a clean bed. Give me something of my own to start. That there and a clean towel, Molly ordered and went to wash. The ex-wife unashamedly used the found cosmetics, noting that she does not use such cheap brands. I'll start with Miranda, but she put it on too, grudgingly hiding her mouth. And the fabric is of poor quality, and the color is like crying. Molly had her own stuff. She didn't have any. It's like she was traveling on a free ride. That surprised Miranda. What did this woman expect? Miranda gave her new acquaintance a leg up on her brother, who now and then slipped off her guest's shoulders, then playfully adjusted them and glanced at Charles. Are you good? She smiled and affectionately fixed his gray hair. There was a bang on his forehead, his cheeks, a limit, wrinkles, but still quite an eagle. Let's go and have some more wine with you. The old one's gone. We'll celebrate our daughter's wedding. Miranda also went to shower, put on a nightgown and a robe on top. And entering the kitchen, she saw Molly sitting on a stool, with her leg tucked under her. Her leg was pulled down from her shoulder, so that it was barely holding onto her ear and was about to fly off, exposing her breasts. Miranda couldn't boast of such a luscious bust, and Charles was almost diving into his ex-wife's cleavage. Miranda, we're going to sit here for a while, and you go to bed, the man said, without inviting his common-law wife to the table. Molly looked victoriously at the defeated rival, and the latter went to the bedroom. She had imagined many times how she would return home after Nancy's wedding, what their empty apartment would be like. How would she and Charles communicate when there was no daughter, the only thing that bound them together? How will their lives change? Miranda will go to her job, Charles to his. And in the evening they'll meet for dinner and talk about something. They'll talk about the weather, the news, and then what? They have no plans together, no common interests. They each lived their own lives. Miranda was afraid to imagine life without Nancy. but still she could not think that the ghost of the past would burst into her house and destroy everything she had built for so long. For a day she felt that Charles would not throw Molly out in the morning, and she would not leave. It was so unreal that Miranda quietly tapped herself on the forehead several times to dislodge the intrusive thoughts. But that was impossible, for from the kitchen came Bethany's cheerful Molly Shield and Charles's husky, conciliatory voice. Miranda did not fall asleep until near morning. She was so washed up mentally that she didn't wake up until close to 11. The woman opened her eyes for a few seconds, as if she were in a past life. Here now she would go and make breakfast for Nancy, as she was always late for work and was going to run hungry. But Miranda won't let her go without breakfast. She will also have time to iron her skirt while the girl puts on makeup. But the haze dissipated, and Miranda felt a slap from reality. Getting out of bed, she threw on a robe and with slippers and went to the kitchen, from where came the delicious smell of coffee and fried fungus. "Hush, are you eating charcot?" Charles walked in on her, pointing at Miranda and the flip-flops. "I didn't mean to," said Miranda. The man frowned. Silently, he shook his head and set out a cup of coffee and red fish and cream cheese sandwiches on a tray. On crusty bread behind Semine on the wall of the room. That's where, as it turned out, Molly was spending the night. "Oh, what a pleasant surprise for me," came the languid voice of Firebird from the room. Miranda felt a twinge of impudence, and Charles had never had breakfast in bed before. What should she do now? Make a scene. She'd never once quarreled with Charles in all the years they'd been together. There were arguments, of course, and cheating on his part, but she put up with it. A husband goes out and comes back with a bouquet. And then, as Silk walks, realizes that there is nothing better than a native home and found care. But what to do in this situation? Miranda didn't know how to react. Throw Molly out. But it's not her apartment to decide who stays here and who gets kicked out. She's not even registered here, and the man she's living with isn't her legal husband. Now you're getting to Miranda. What's your mom's point? Were you worried, Charles? Did you want to live with him? If he wanted to, he kicked you out, put someone else in, and your concern for his daughter won't matter. He won't remember you with gratitude. On the contrary, you'll owe him one. Nevertheless, Miranda decided to take it easy and just send her away. To get some fresh air, she walked around the city, had lunch in cafes, then went to museums. She walked like that until the evening, but she wasn't in a hurry to go home. I went to a friend's house, and her cell phone rang in her bag. "Hello, Miranda. Are you coming home soon?" Charles asked in a strange voice. "Have you been drinking again?" Today was the second day of the wedding, but they were celebrating in their own way. Only with their friends they went somewhere to the amusement center. Apparently, Charles is celebrating his daughter's wedding to his ex-wife. "I'm at a friend's house. I'm not planning on going home yet. I'll be home later, but how long? My husband wouldn't stop. What do you need?" "All right, I'll be there in about 3 hours, not sooner." "Okay," rejoiced the man and disconnected from the call. It's clear. They're afraid I'm interrupting their frolic. Miranda thought with annoyance, and then she decided no way. Not with her. He hates her. Meetha's resentment for this woman who had so cynically abandoned him with a small child was too deep. Miranda was sitting at a friend's house, not herself. Girlfriend Lisa Bright, spectacular girl under 50, who did not allow to call herself a woman and could for such an obligation even knocked on the head. Shannon hastily fastened on her blonde dyed high for honest hair. She wasn't expecting guests, but she was still on parade. In the morning, the beauty made herself brightly colored makeup, applied perfume, thought of some intricate hairstyle. But Shannon braced herself only when she went out or when she was expecting guests. She didn't have time for this. That's a shame. That ponytail doesn't bother Lisa. Everybody's in. Miranda laughed, putting a cake on the table for tea. No, a lady friend should always look good like a queen. Looking at Shannon's dumped Shannon friends, Miranda sighed ponytail long ago time to renew it as time. But the beauty had absolutely no money. She lived very modestly. It's unclear what she did for a living. She said she had a hobby that brought in some pennies. The apartment was Utkins, and at any moment Lisa could be kicked out of it. Repair in the apartment was old, wallpaper colored, tile in the kitchen terrible. But the beauty had expensive perfume Chanel and several sets of expensive silk underwear. All her life she lived miserably, like that dragonfly from the fable. She changed lovers like gloves, got married and divorced. In the end, I was left with nothing. But she had no regrets. So what, Miranda? You and I both ended up broke. I was with the goat and you were with the ants. But now we're both broke. Alone, no kids, no men, no one wants them. Although you still have your mother's apartment. And you still have some kind of an appraisal, but still. That's not what makes me happy. Miranda just sighed. She realized that her friend was right. You know what, let's go with you to a place to have fun. Let's dance, naughty, winking, suggested her friend. No, Lisa, I don't want to. Not in the mood. I'm not in the mood. Miranda waved me off. Don't be silly. What moods? It's a matter of getting dressed. We'll do your makeup and hair, and we'll find clothes from my closet. Lisa, I'm bigger than you. I didn't fit into your dresses. You see, it's not like she's on a diet anymore. That's what I am. No money for food, so thin, slim and transparent, praised Lisa. Don't worry about the dress. Finding sparkly, shapeless dresses on trips and boots. Lisa made her friend dress up. She also did her hair. The most colorful makeup. Oh my God, I'm never going out. Shame on you, Miranda protested. You will, she said confidently and dragged Miranda by the hand. They went to a bar that Lisa frequented. Miranda, on the other hand, had never been to such places. She felt terribly uncomfortable, especially because she looked so vulgar. In general, she always looked with pity at women of age who tried to jump into the last carriage. And now she was one herself. It's not for nothing that they say don't judge. There were a lot of people in the hall, loud music was playing, people were having fun dancing. Fortunately, the audience was of age. There were only a few young people. I need a drink for courage, Miranda whispered. I'll go to the bar. I'll order something elegant. What are you, a backwoods girl? Her friend stopped her. Ordering for yourself is mauvaise. A woman should be served by a man. Well, where do you get them? Men? Miranda wondered. Where do you get them? Look around and there are plenty of them here. The main thing is to dance, and they will come to you, her friend said knowingly. And Miranda started to dance, first overcoming herself and her complexes, and then from the heart. She had not been to discos for a long time, and here was the music of her youth. Ah, how good it was in those distant years. So many hopes, aspirations, a completely different way of looking at things. Somewhere naive, of course, and there was strength. Energy. We could dance all night and in the morning go to the institute or to work. Some, for example, went to the factory. And now only to move to the music began already pressure. Although it's pathetic, look how the goat is jumping. Of course, she's a trained person. All her life jumped like a grasshopper. And she, Miranda, buried herself in pots and pans. Now it's no wonder her body is under stress. Luckily, the rhythmic music faded. In its place, a calm, smooth melody blasted from the speakers. Why are you spinning, you fool? Lisa laughed. Don't you see? It's a couple's dance. Everyone's in pairs, and you're the only one saying it. Miranda blushed with embarrassment. She was really so engrossed that she kept dancing alone, trying to adjust to the slow rhythm. They're through. This is the perfect time to get a free cocktail. Now we're going to have some derelicts sitting down. With these words, the girl led her friend to the bar. So now we sit and wait, she said. Just chatting with you will be at ease. And they'll pull themselves up. No, I can't wait for a handout like that. Miranda shook her head. I'll order something for you too. Oh, you're a boring friend. Lisa was disappointed. Well, I'll have a Bloody Mary then. Bloody Mary, please. And I'll have a sweet cocktail or something light. Ladies, let me pay for your order. A man with kind eyes and a wide smile offered kindly. He had bald patches, popularly called wolf ears. Gray hair was tangled in his hair, and deep wrinkles crossed his forehead. Dressed simply shirt, worn jeans, jacket clearly not new. After assessing the groom with a professional eye, Lisa took a bored look at the payment, but still allowed him to pay, doing the man a favor. And Miranda froze from excitement on the high chair, where her lush ass could barely fit. It had been a long time since a man had approached her to get acquainted, though this beau was clearly not her type. The way he's veiny, he's coming on to her, but it's probably for the best. Miranda's not looking for a love adventure anyway. So she decided to shake things up, and she's got a husband, so there's no intrigue. My name is James. The man smiled. Lisa reluctantly told him her name. Miranda, on the other hand, was more welcoming, not because she was flirting, but because she was polite and didn't want to embarrass anyone. They had a drink and went dancing again. James kept hanging around Miranda the whole time. And as soon as the quiet melody sounded again, he invited her to a slow dance. "I'll steal her away from you," Lisa said with a smile, taking Miranda's hand. "Let's go to the ladies' room to powder her nose." "Of course," nodded the man. "I'll be waiting for your return, Miranda." As soon as they entered the restroom, Lisa pounced on her companion. "What are you doing, Miranda?" "I'm picking up scum. There are so many men around and you fall for some working man?" "I didn't fall for anyone. He's just a nice man, a good man. And anyway, I'm not free and I'm not going to flirt with anyone." "Oh, you're hopeless," Lisa waved her hand. "You can't find a young lover to be happy with. Not a man, but good for life. Do you need to go to a convent with that attitude?" "Okay, let's go to the gym." The friends went to the gym, and Miranda continued chatting with James until they were interrupted by Lisa, a hungry tigress. She hadn't hooked up with anyone, so she considered the evening ruined and wanted to go home. "James, could you arrange a cab for us?" Lisa asked languidly. "Sure, girls, right away," James fussed. The three of them went outside and immediately saw a car with checkered license plates. "Pay the driver, please," Lisa ordered after she and Miranda had gotten into the back seat. Sure," said the man and handed the cab driver the bills. "Miranda, can I have your phone number?" James asked shyly one last time. "No, you can't," Lisa answered for her friend. "At least mine, write it down," the man pleaded. But Lisa closed the door abruptly in front of his nose and told the cab driver to touch it. "Not nice," Miranda shook her head, looking back at the confused James, who was left standing in the rain-soaked street. "No big deal. He's got his lip out." Lisa shoved the phone at him. Miranda herself quickly put James out of her mind. Now she was interested in another question. When she returned to her apartment at night, would she find Molly there, or had she scattered, as it should be, as a ghost? But not so. Miranda was greeted at home by an indignant Charles and an arrogant Molly, who stood leaning against the door jamb and crossing her arms over her chest. She was wearing slippers and her own robe. She showed up, Charles shouted angrily. "Did you guys wait for me?" Miranda also became bolder. "I think you two are having a wonderful time." Molly said judgmentally. "Demachka, look at her. She showed up in the middle of the night, indecently dressed, with vulgar makeup, with alcohol and chicken smell, and she's making hints in our direction. And this woman raised my daughter for so many years. It's frightening. What could she have taught her? I taught her to be an honest person and not to leave her loved ones in distress," Miranda said. "You weren't even around." "Stop that right now." Charles was outraged. "Molly had circumstances, but your behavior has yet to be discussed." "We'll discuss it tomorrow," Miranda said, and went to wash up. Tonight had been interesting, colorful, though strange, and Miranda was horrified to realize that in her life such bright moments could be counted on a few fingers. All her interests revolved around Nancy and Charles, nothing of her own. Molly and Charles were talking in the kitchen again late into the night, but Miranda closed the door so she wouldn't hear them talking. She knew her husband wouldn't be coming over for a sleepover, just like he hadn't last night. And she didn't care, at least not tonight. In the morning, she noticed that the ex-spouses were going somewhere. "We're going to Nancy's," the man reluctantly announced. "Oh, so I'm going with you," Miranda said. "No, we'll go there together as parents, you know." The girl hadn't seen her own mother for so long. They have something to say to each other. They need a hug. "And then you'll visit separately." "Is that a deal? Separately without you?" Miranda grinned. "I didn't say without me." "Why are you hanging on to words?" Charles replied irritably. They left. Miranda was alone with herself, and her thoughts about life turned upside down. She had to think about what to do. And while she was leisurely drinking another cup of coffee, A real drama was unfolding in Nancy and Mason's apartment. Molly was on her knees in front of her daughter, begging for forgiveness for all the years of separation. "Mommy, please get up," sobbing, begged her daughter. "We have already discussed everything on the phone and at the wedding. I understood and forgave everything. God is your judge and I have no right to judge." But Molly continued to sob, begging for her daughter's forgiveness. So pitifully and so sincerely that even Mason and Charles couldn't stand it, let a tear fall, and then they went out for a smoke, leaving the women alone. "My sweet Nancy, I look at you and I don't understand how I could have been so callous when I left you. I spent so many years repenting, feeding myself and hating myself. Mommy, but why didn't you look for me? We lived at the same address. I didn't even change schools. It was easy to find me." "Oh, daughter," Molly sobbed. "I was sure you wouldn't read me. And if I heard you say the cruel words that you didn't need me anymore, that you hated me, my heart couldn't take it. And I was sure I would hear them. After all, your father had made it clear to me that he didn't want to see me anymore and would do anything to make you hate me and forget me. And that's when the beauty shop attendant handed me your note with your number, when she told me you were getting married soon, and I blossomed. I couldn't be happier. And now, my daughter, I ask you for one thing. Let me be your mother, at least for now. You know that you don't need me like you did when you were a child, but in a feminine, maternal way I can help you, sweetheart." "Of course, Mommy," choking with happiness, said the girl. When her father and mother left, Nancy dialed Miranda's number. "Mommy, you mean Miranda?" "Oh, I'm totally confused," she said with bitterness in her voice. It's okay, honey, just say what you want." The woman spoke softly. "My mom and dad were visiting. You know, I think they want to make up. They waited so long for each other, they foolishly separated, but they loved each other all their lives. It's like a movie, you know." "I know," Miranda answered quietly. "But here I ask you, just don't stop them from having a good time. Don't interfere with their happiness. I love you very much, you raised me. But it's still my mom and dad. I'm sorry." "I'm not mad, honey," Miranda assured her. "What's more, my things are no longer in your father's apartment. I'm out. And then I left the way I left. My dad hasn't told me anything. He doesn't know yet. I packed up and left today," Miranda explained. "Where did you go?" Concerned asked the girl to her mother's apartment. "It's a good thing the tenants didn't give up anything." "Don't worry about me. I'm an aunt. Adults will not be lost. But this is also a native. Worry about your happiness. I love you, my daughter, and I love you." Nancy said confusedly. "Don't you take offense at me." "Not at all," said the stepmother. "I don't know how to take offense at you, my daughter." Charles was puzzled when he did not find Miranda at home, but he did not return her. He was even relieved when he realized she was no longer in the house. All because he really wanted to reconcile with his ex-wife, and she didn't seem to mind. Shrewish Molly quickly moved things to her ex-husband, who after a very short time invited her to the registry office. Having learned about it, Miranda bought first 1 bottle of wine, but then changed her mind and took 3. And she went to Angie's. There she cried, dropping her head on her shoulder and wiping her tears with a lush Lisa Chanson. "I've lived with him for so many years. He didn't marry me. And this one, who supposedly hated him so much, who betrayed him, who caused such a trauma to the child." He dragged her to the registry office. "She didn't make it. It's okay, my friend. And on our street we'll turn over a truck with good men," calmed her friend. "I won't have anything." Miranda waved her hand. "Not a child, not a kitten, and you won't see the gear once in a while. She is always at work, or with her husband, or with her parents. And who am I? I'm nobody. There's no time for me." "But it's okay, friend. It's a shame, of course, but you have to let the kids go. Don't take it out on Nancy. She's young, she's stupid. You never know how life will turn out. She'll come running to you for comfort. It's not like she disowned you. She calls me and asks me how you're doing. She gave you a gorgeous tablecloth for New Year's Eve. She just loves her mother. There's Gina's mother. Get on with your life. She's Nancy, and she's got a lot on her plate. Let her digest the hard stuff. Lisa's daughter thinks about her all the time, Big Nose Miranda. And he betrayed her." "Oh, your boyfriend," shouted the blonde. "He never loved you, just used you for labor. You're a nanny and a governess and a cook and a laundress for him. That's what my mother used to say. The woman sighed. You should have listened to your mother, Lisa turned. In general, find yourself a man and don't be stupid. Don't you want to hook up with a single guy with a tummy? You know, they're the best lovers. You can walk away from them. Do they give you gifts? They don't ask you for anything. They don't want to make brain contact. Do they have a wife for that? No, never a wife. It's taboo to muzzle the lips. Miranda, it's a bad idea. Like they say, you can't taste it, you can't feel it. Is that what they say? Yes, it does. Anyway, don't mess with yourself or the man on my wall, and you start living. And finally, I'm about to turn 50. This is not yet lived like a man, said Lisa confidently. Who needs me so fat and old? Miranda sighed. Stop it. Bury yourself before the time on people like us, young ones, because we know how to love, and not like these young girls only look at the purse. And they can't give anything in return, neither women's souls nor their bodies. They don't have the energy that a man needs, you know. Who knows what these men need? Miranda sighed. They complained to each other a little more about women's plight. And Miranda, having received moral support from her friend, went home to the apartment where she spent her childhood. The same one where her mother had scolded her daughter for trading her life so cheaply. Perhaps, mother, you were right. Miranda sighed heavily, turning to the emptiness of the dark apartment. As time went on, life gradually improved. Charles and Molly lived quite well. So much so that they even had a son in their old age. They named him the Fancy Mark. But parents, you let them have a baby in their old age? Nancy marveled, rocking in her arms a little brother, with whom she was a quarter of a century apart. Oh, Nancy, and don't tell me it's so hard to bear a child at such a ripe age. They took me for a grandfather at the hospital. Charles laughed. Well, that's not surprising. I'm older, Molly. Nancy looked at her brother and, on the one hand, was happy. On the other hand, she was sad because she had not yet experienced the joy of motherhood. She was ready for a child. But Mason had said it was not yet time to procreate. Nancy sincerely did not understand it, because they have everything and a good apartment and a car. Her husband has a stable job, and she is in maternity leave. She can work as a translator. But Mason was not satisfied with these arguments. But with his nephew Mark, who was not even related to him by blood, the young man spent time with great pleasure and rocked him, and even changed diapers and fed him with formula. One day Nancy's cycle went off. There was a delay. Mason ran to get a pregnancy test and, while his wife was in the bathroom, yelled to her through the door that if it showed 2 stripes, abortion immediately. Not an option. Fortunately, there was only 1 stripe. Nancy decided she wasn't going to push it. Her husband doesn't want kids, she doesn't need them. She's young enough to mature. And she has time, she can wait. In the West, at 35, they're just thinking about motherhood. So now you have to live, just live for yourself, enjoy yourself, fill yourself up. But that sounded good in theory. In reality, Nancy was always feeling sad and empty. She went to exhibitions, did not miss significant events in the city, attended meetings of movie buffs, literary evenings. And everyone said, "Oh, Nancy, you're so versatile, so active." But the reason was only because the girl tried to fill her emptiness in every possible way. But not only that tormented the young wife. Mason was behaving strangely, staying late at work, finding various excuses not to accompany his wife to the event. Is there someone else out there? No way. I mean, we've only been married for a short time. We haven't gotten sick of each other yet. One day, Nancy came home alone early. Her classes had all failed to show up for class, as if they'd conspired and all texted just before class. Someone was stuck in the elevator, someone's cat was in labor, someone's kid was sick. Nancy had to drive home. Quietly entering the apartment, she found a woman's shoes in the hallway, guessing that they were their guests. The girl peeked into the kitchen, but no one was there, nor in the living room. Dreadful conjectures swept over Nancy. With a sinking heart, she proceeded to the bedroom. The two, without a hint of any clothes, were frolicking so self-consciously that she did not even notice that one of the participants in the lovemaking was her husband. But the other Nancy, from excitement, did not know at once. And when she came to her senses from the shock, she realized it was her own mother Molly in bed with her husband. Mason. "Mom," whispered the girl. The commotion on the bed abruptly stopped. Molly shrieked and covered her face with her hands. Her husband jumped up and hastily got back into the blanket. "Are you? What are you doing here?" Was it bewildered torture on his face? Nancy only shook her head and sprinted away in tears. She immediately called her father and told him everything. His reaction was so violent that the girl regretted the way she had upset him. She should have prepared him for this terrible news. When everyone had calmed down and returned to a more or less adequate state, it was decided to get together for a family council. Charles, however, couldn't help himself and went after Mason with his fists as soon as he saw him. But the young man was stronger and threw the man against the wall with a single push. "Don't. It's unnecessary. We'll settle things in a civilized, calm manner," he said. Molly tried to beg Nancy's forgiveness, tried talking to Charles. But Mason intervened again. "You don't have to humiliate yourself in front of them. How could you? Mom, you betrayed me and Dad a second time. The second you ruined my life again." Unable to contain herself, Nancy sobbed. "I trusted you. I betrayed Miranda, and you did this to me." "How long have you had this, deaf?" Charles asked. "A long time," Mason replied defiantly. Even before Mark was born, the cheating husband guessed. Mason only nodded silently. "I knew Mark wasn't my son," Charles sighed. "I just didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think I'd get that way a second time." Oh my God," said the dazed Nancy slowly. "Papa Mark is Mason's son. I don't believe it. And you take a better look, daughter. If a man wants to be deaf and blind, he will be. But just as I fell under her spell years ago. And now I've offended a good woman. Serves me right." "Ah. What do you mean you got caught a second time? That's what you said, that you got caught a second time." "I don't understand." "Explain," Nancy asked, hesitating, afraid to hear the answer. "But you'll tell her," Charles grinned, looking at Molly, who couldn't find the words this time, and stared stupidly at the floor. "All right, I'll do it for you, Nancy. You're not my blood daughter, and I knew that because Molly cheated on me. But I forgave her. I broke myself because I loved her. I stood my ground, but I couldn't break up with the one I loved. And then she left you, ran off with another man. I thought she'd changed after all these years. But you can't change Molly. You raised me knowing I wasn't your daughter?" Nancy asked. "But I didn't put you in an orphanage, did I?" "You've always been like family to me," Charles explained. "What kind of dirt has a girl gotten into?" "My father, Mason, you yelled at me so much, afraid, over the summer was against children, and she made a child and satisfied." "How so?" "But I'm not going to answer to you for my actions. And I feel better now. I'm sick of lying. It's moving out on you today," Nancy said. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Your case?" Shrugged indifferently. "Well, that's it, Molly." Charles spoke up. "I'm not raising your second child. Cuckoo, you understand? You go wherever you want." And Molly left with Mark, gone to Mason's, and Nancy returned to her father's house. With trembling fingers, she dialed Miranda's number. "Hello, Mom?" She spoke quietly into the receiver. "We're quieter than water," the woman answered. "It's been a long time. It's not good, Mom," Nancy said in a huge voice. "What's wrong?" Miranda asked worriedly. "I broke up with Mason. I'm really sick. Can I come to you?" "Oh, I see." "Nancy, is there anyone with you?" "Yeah, my dad, but he's not himself. You know, my mom, Molly, she left too. She went to Mason. Aha, it's like Santa Barbara in there." Miranda gasped. "Yes, Mommy." "Let's get together," begged Nancy. "Okay, Zipper. Look, I have an important meeting right now. I can't cancel it. I'll come straight to you afterwards. If you're not feeling well, I can give you the number of a psychologist I know. She's a very good woman who helps with crisis situations. To be honest, I was hoping we could meet now." Nancy flew by. "Honey, you're a strong, mature girl. No one died, no one got hurt. Betrayal is hard to deal with, I know that. But I can't cancel. Once it's over, I'm all yours." "Thanks, Mom. I'll be waiting," the girl said in confusion. Miranda used to fly to her stepdaughter's house, even if she was at the North Pole. But things had changed since then. The woman put herself in the foreground, and for this many acquaintances took offense at her. But she looked even a little bit better, although she still remained in the body. But now she did not call herself fat, but said that she was nice, puffed up, successfully selected clothes and fidgeted near the mirror, admiring herself. One day Miranda bought a new curtain rod that she couldn't hang by herself. And then she remembered that she had once opened a number from a paper advertisement that offered a husband for an hour. The lonely woman called the number. And what was her surprise when James came to her, the very one with whom she had discoed. James was pleased too, and an unexpected meeting. After he hung up the ledge, Miranda gave him tea and apologized heartily for behaving impolitely towards him in the club. They got to talking. James said he worked in a factory. However, now his rate has been significantly reduced, and now he is in Colima. He has enough money. His wife is divorced. They waited until the kids were grown and split up. They separated peacefully, without quarrels. Now they communicate like old friends. Ex-wife married a historian, smartest man in the world, according to James, but no hands. So I sometimes visit them at my wife's request to do minor repairs. Why should I quarrel with them? Not at all. On the contrary, I'm glad my wife is well settled. He's a good, reliable, loving man. And if the faucet leaks, I'll help. Isn't that a pity? Miranda listened and marveled at the nobility of this laborer, as Lisa dubbed him. A man and a woman began to meet. An affair began. Miranda had never felt so happy before. She finally knew what love was. Their romance lasted 3 months, and James proposed to Miranda. At first the woman was afraid to accept it, but then she decided that she had absolutely nothing to lose. Nancy was invited to the wedding and was genuinely happy for her stepmother. The day they had a serious conversation, Nancy sincerely apologized to the woman who had raised her, but the woman held no grudge. "You've done so much for me and I've traded you for her," the girl cried. "Nancy, love is when you do something for someone without expecting anything in return. So I didn't expect gratitude from you, and I don't hold a grudge against you," Miranda said and hugged her face again. The wedding was modest, but it was fun and energizing. Everyone was danced by Lisa. She was also a toastmaster, cheered the guests, invented contests. "Good all the same you got a man. I should have spun it," joking annoyance, and said the blonde. "No, it's too late for your friend. He's mine now. And we're gonna live happily ever after. Yes, we will." Lisa picked up and solemnly raised her glass of champagne. Miranda blossomed, but Charles, on the other hand, declined. He looked worse, older, thinner, and Molly didn't know anything about his ex-wife and didn't want to know. She didn't have the moral strength for it. She only knew that she had moved with her son to Mason, and his parents for a long time could not accept it, the great-aged daughter-in-law, who even yesterday was their matchmaker, and now turned out to be not only with fuck, but also the mother of their grandson, which they did not suspect. Nancy didn't know anything about the mother either and didn't want to know. As soon as she remembered her, immediately the unseemly picture of infidelity appeared in front of her eyes. It was disgusting. One day Miranda, Nancy, and were walking in the park and saw 3 familiar figures. A man in his 50s, a well-groomed woman, and a cute little baby with them. Those are Mason's parents and Mark is with them. Nancy recognized them. "Well, go say hello," Miranda suggested. Nancy approached timidly. Mark didn't recognize her, but reached for the girl anyway. "Nancy." The former in-laws cheered. "Haven't seen you in a while. How are you?" "Hello." "What is—" Nancy smiled. "I'm fine. How are you doing?" "I see. Out for a walk with my grandson." "Oh, that's the kind of songs we go out to." The ex-mother-in-law lowered her eyes. "What is it?" sincerely surprised Nancy, taking the child in her arms. "Yes," sighed the man. "Mason has gone to the capital. There he has, you see, prospects." Alianka disappeared in an unknown direction. The cuckoo had abandoned the child. At these words, Nancy acquired a shiver. "Drop the baby. Nothing again, little ones. But I won't leave you. Never will," she said in Mark's ear and pressed her cheek gently against his chubby cheeks.